They laughed at him the moment he stepped through the glass doors. His clothes were old, his shoes worn. His hat, a simple straw one, looked like it belonged to another world, not in the marble halls of a city bank filled with polished shoes and sharp suits. That he didn't belong there, at least that's what everyone thought. The manager smirked. The customers whispered. Even the clerk behind the counter rolled his eyes. The old man didn't flinch. He just smiled faintly, clutching an old wallet in his rough, calloused hands, hands that had built, planted, and labored for longer than most of them had lived. Checking my balance, he said quietly. The manager laughed, his voice echoing across the hall. If you even have a balance, old man, I'll double it myself. Laughter followed, shallow, cruel, contagious, but what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, was that the man in the straw hat owned every inch of that bank, that he was the founder, the silent CEO, and he had come not to flaunt power, but to remind a world obsessed with image what true wealth really looks like. By the time he walked out that day, the laughter had died, the arrogance had cracked, and the entire lobby stood in silence, not because of money, but because of a truth too often forgotten. Respect costs nothing, but it reveals everything. The morning sun spilled through the bank's wide glass windows, painting streaks of gold across the polished marble floor. The rhythmic tapping of heels and the rustle of paperwork created a hum of routine, the kind of weekday soundscape where life moved briskly and faces remained indifferent. In that world of precision and polish, the revolving glass door turned, and in stepped a man who seemed to belong to another time. Harlan, tall but stooped with age, his gray beard was trimmed unevenly, his checkered shirt faded from decades of sun, and his jeans bore the quiet scars of labor, threadbare knees, frayed hems. The straw hat on his head had protected him through countless summers in open fields. He held an old wallet, weathered and soft, like it had lived 1,000 stories in his pocket. As he stepped forward, conversation slowed. A few customers exchanged glances, some curious, others amused. In a place where luxury watches gleamed and perfume filled the air, he stood out like a memory of a forgotten world. Harlan didn't mind. He was used to stares, used to whispers. But there was always a quiet dignity about him, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. He took his place in line, eyes on the counter, patient as ever. From behind the glass office, Victor Morrow, the branch manager, spotted him. Victor was everything Mr. Harlan was not: young, handsome, and polished to perfection. His dark blue suit gleamed under the fluorescent lights. His tie was the color of confidence, red, bold, and loud. He carried himself like a man who measured worth in watches, shoes, and zeros. When his eyes landed on the elderly man, he chuckled. "That guy again," he muttered. The clerk beside him grinned. "Probably needs a few dollars withdrawn again." Victor smirked, straightening his tie. "Let's give him a show." He stepped out of his office, loud enough for everyone to notice. "Morning, folks." His voice carried charm. Then, spotting Mr. Harlan, he added with mock cheer, "Good to see you again, sir. Here to check your piggy bank?" Laughter trickled through the lobby. Some hid their smiles behind their phones, others didn't bother. Harlan's lips curved just slightly, not in anger, but in a kind of sad understanding. "Yes," he said softly. "Just checking my balance." Victor folded his arms. "Tell you what," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you actually have a balance, I'll pay you double." The laughter this time was sharper, crueler. The elderly man didn't respond. He didn't need to. Years of toil had taught him that silence carried more strength than any insult. When his turn finally came, the clerk took his ID with a smirk, fingers tapping lazily at the keyboard. The screen blinked, and suddenly, his posture straightened. The smirk faded. His jaw tightened. The numbers staring back at him didn't make sense. "Sir, the clerk stammered, eyes darting to Victor. "You might want to." Victor waved him off, laughing. "What's wrong? Did he overdraft his Before he could finish, he snatched the printed slip from the clerk's trembling hand. The laughter died in his throat, the balance was astronomical, more zeros than his eyes could process. His pulse quickened. His fingers trembled. He looked up, his face pale as chalk. Mr. Harlan, he managed, voice cracking. The old man's eyes, calm and kind, met his. Yes, he said softly. I built this bank a long time ago. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every pair of eyes in that marble hall turned toward the man in the straw hat, the one they had laughed at, pitted, and dismissed. Victor's confident stance collapsed. His throat tightened as realization sank in. The man he had mocked wasn't just a customer. He was the owner, the founder, the reason this building even existed. Harlan took the slip of paper, folded it neatly, and tucked it into his wallet. Then, turning to Victor, he spoke, his voice steady, deep, and impossibly calm. The real balance we carry, he said, isn't in a bank account, but in how we treat others. You could have heard a pin drop. Victor's cheeks burned crimson. The floor beneath him felt heavier than stone. Every polished surface reflected his own humiliation back at him. The old man walked toward the exit, each step echoing through the marble hall. Before he reached the door, he paused, turned back, and faced the crowd. I grew up with nothing, he began. Every dollar I earned came from sweat, sacrifice, and patience. I built this bank not to make men arrogant, but to help families dream again. To remind us that respect should come before wealth. If you ever see someone who looks tired, poor, or out of place, remember, you don't know the storms they've survived. Treat them with the dignity you'd want for yourself. The air seemed to still. Even the ticking of the clock on the wall hesitated. An old man near the corner nodded, eyes glistening. A young mother wiped away tears, clutching her child's hand. A businessman lowered his phone, shame flickering across his face, and Victor, he stood frozen, every ounce of his arrogance shattered, replaced by something foreign, remorse. Harlan smiled faintly, tipping his straw hat. Good day, he said, and stepped into the sunlight. The glass doors closed behind him, and for a long moment, no one moved. That afternoon, whispers spread like wildfire. By evening, the story had reached the corporate tower. Within days, Victor was summoned to a meeting. In the boardroom sat Mr. Harlan, no straw hat this time, just a simple gray suit and the same calm eyes. Leadership, he said quietly, isn't measured by how loudly you speak, but by how kindly you listen. Victor couldn't meet his gaze. His resignation came soon after. The staff worked differently from that day on. Customers were greeted with warmth, not judgment. And whenever someone new walked in wearing worn shoes or faded clothes, the tellers remembered, you never know who's standing before you. Harlan continued to live simply, walking to the same cafe every morning, tipping generously, smiling at strangers. He didn't need recognition. The world's applause had never been his currency. Years later, his story became a quiet legend, retold in offices, classrooms, and homes. Not as a tale about a wealthy man in disguise, but as a reminder of something more precious than gold. That character never hides behind appearances, and that day, in a sunlit lobby filled with strangers, one humble man taught them all what true wealth really means. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness and respect are the truest forms of wealth. Speech balloon comment, respect before wealth. Loudspeaker like, share, and subscribe to Echo Tales, where stories remind the world that goodness still matters.